If you've been here a while, this episode is going to feel a little different. That's intentional. You didn't accidentally jump back to the beginning, and you're not in the wrong place. Over the last 24 episodes, we've spent time exploring ideas, often one at a time. Tensions, stories, questions around leadership, identity, seasons, and meaning. And there was a reason for that. Those conversations weren't random. They were responses to something many of us are experiencing, especially after we built something meaningful. At a certain point, it becomes helpful to pause, step back, and name the space those conversations are actually happening in. That's what today's episode is about. If you're new here, this is actually a great place to step in. You didn't miss anything, and you might be arriving at just the right moment. So let me explain where you are. You're in our tasting room. In whiskey, a tasting room isn't a bar. It's usually found in a distillery where the people who make the whiskey invite you to taste what they've created, built from the ground up. People gather around a table and they sample, they taste, and they listen. They describe what they're experiencing and hear how others describe the very same thing. Through the tasting and the conversation, their own understanding deepens. Often, they write down what they notice so they can remember it later. You don't need to be a whiskey expert to have a seat at the table. Curiosity is enough. Here, the tasting room works the same way, just not with whiskey. This too is a space to notice what we're experiencing as leaders and as people curious about the season in life that's calling us. It's a space to listen, to learn, and to lean in, to be guided towards clear awareness through shared experience and conversation. At some point, many of us reach a season where what we've built no longer answers the deeper questions that we're carrying. Even though work is working and life is moving ahead, there's still a tension between what we've built and what we're built for. That tension doesn't mean that we're doing something wrong. It usually means that something is forming, and that's why this space exists. Crafted Clarity exists as a tasting room for that season, a place to listen, learn, lean in, and orient ourselves to the process that's refining us. Here, we use the whiskey distillation process as a way to describe how we got here, what we're doing here, and where to go from here. Whiskey starts with ordinary ingredients, and through heat, pressure, time, and restraint, something is refined. Nothing is added to it, but something is revealed. And the same process shows up in leadership, in life, and in the shift many people are feeling after success. You won't be rushed here, and you won't be handed answers. You will be invited to notice what's already happening and to learn from it. So whether you've been listening for a while or you're stepping in for the first time, welcome to the tasting room. To understand why distillation matters here, it helps to start at the beginning. Not with whiskey, but with what you and I bring into the process. In whiskey, everything starts with what's called the mash. The mash is a combination of simple ingredients, grains, and water. Nothing special on their own. But together, they carry potential. That's not much different than us. We arrive with a unique mash of our own. Our experiences, our talents, the roles we've stepped into, the success that we built, the responsibilities that we carry. None of it is accidental, and none of it is wasted. It's the raw material of who we are and what we've built so far. But the mash isn't meaningful on its own, and it isn't the end of the story. It's just the beginning. To become whiskey, its true purpose, the mash has to be fermented. This is where the individual ingredients are mixed and begin to change. This is the part of the process that happens beneath the surface. Nothing looks like it's changing, but everything is changing. Sugars are converted. Yeast gets to work. Energy is released in ways that you can't see. What matters is that the transformation is happening before it's even visible. And this is where many people find themselves without even realizing it. The work you've done, the thing you've built, the responsibility that you've stepped into. And while others don't see it, you know something is changing internally. Your questions are different. Your motivations feel less settled. What once energized you now feels heavier, more complex, or like you're just going through the motions. Fermentation is uncomfortable because it's invisible. You can't point to progress yet, and you can't clearly explain what's happening. But something is forming. Next comes distillation. In whiskey making, this is where heat enters the process, not to destroy what's there, but to separate it. Distillation draws out what truly matters, leaving behind what doesn't belong. For us, heat often shows up in quiet ways. Stepping into a role we didn't fully choose. Realizing our decisions now affect more people than just ourselves. Noticing that something we once felt confident about suddenly carries more risk. And that's usually when tension appears. The tension between the life we've constructed and the person we're becoming. That weight feels deeper. Decisions don't resolve as quickly, and clarity takes more time instead of arriving on demand. And because we're not sure what's next, our instinct is often to respond in one of two ways. Either we push harder, applying more effort, more control, or more activity, or we ignore what's building inside, hoping it'll settle on its own. But whiskey doesn't have those options. It has to move through the process in order to become what it was meant to be. Distillation doesn't respond to force or avoidance. It responds to intention. It's about discerning what stays, what's essential, what's true, and what carries forward. Then, after all of that, comes time. After whiskey is distilled, it's placed into a barrel to rest. Sometimes that rest can last years. And as it waits, it endures season after season, heat and cold, humidity and darkness, waiting for the process to do its work, waiting to finally become what it was truly made for. For us, this waiting is often the hardest part. After the formation of the ingredients, after the heat and pressure and discernment, we're often left in a season of not knowing how long this process will take. So we wait without a timeline, without clarity, without certainty. And yet, this is often the season where most meaningful work happens. The waiting is where the deeper questions about direction, purpose, and calling begin to clarify. It's where depth replaces urgency, where purpose clarifies, and where identity settles. The point of this process isn't just to create whiskey. It's recognition. If you're feeling pressure right now, if you feel anxious about wanting to come out of the barrel, if clarity feels elusive or slower or deeper, you may be in the middle of refinement, and that's a very different story. There's a reason that you are here right now, and a reason these conversations keep returning to tensions common in these seasons. Most people arrive here because something has been built: a career, a role, a life with responsibility and momentum. But at a certain point, success alone no longer answers the deeper questions. This podcast exists to help leaders and anyone navigating these seasons put a language to the gap between external success and internal alignment. Like whiskey in the distillation process, that tension isn't resolved by adding more. It's resolved through clarity, reflection, discernment, and time. You'll notice the conversations tend to circle familiar territory: pressure, identity, seasons, waiting, depth, and meaning. That's because they consistently surface as we move from success towards significance. They reflect the same process that we see in distillation. What's accumulated gets examined. What's under pressure gets revealed. And what no longer belongs gets separated. And what matters most begins to clarify. As you listen, take notes. Hear how others describe their experience, and you'll notice a few things begin to happen. You'll gain knowledge for what you're feeling. You'll recognize patterns instead of isolated moments. And you'll stop trying to force clarity and start trusting the process that forms it. Over time, that perspective can change how you lead, decide, wait, and move forward. When you go to a whiskey tasting, you write down things that stood out, the things you want to remember. Here are my tasting notes from today. Yours might be different. First, what brings you into the process matters. Your experiences, your success, your responsibilities, none of it is wasted. It's the raw material, not the finished product. And it's meant to be refined. Second, some of the most important change happens beneath the surface. Just because you can't see progress yet, it doesn't mean that nothing is happening. Third, pressure doesn't automatically mean something is wrong. Often, it's a sign that refinement has begun. Fourth, clarity doesn't always arrive on demand. When it takes time, it tends to settle more deeply. And finally, waiting isn't empty. In many seasons, it's where most of the meaningful work is happening. If this conversation resonated, it's likely because you are in a season where clarity is forming. Not all at once, but through reflection, discernment, and time. That's why this space exists. You're always welcome back into the tasting room. And if you know others who are carrying that same tension between success and significance, invite them into the conversation. Alongside the podcast, there is another way to stay connected to the refining process. The tasting room emails are an additional space with reflections, prompts, and notes that build on these conversations. You can sign up at craftedclarity.net. However you choose to engage, thank you for being here. And remember, clarity isn't found. It's crafted. Thanks for listening to Crafted Clarity. If you're a leader wrestling with the tension between success and significance, or you're trying to align your work with a deeper calling, I'd love to connect with you. If your organization is facing questions about strategy, whether it's alignment, ROI, or building confidence in your team, this is the work we do every day at iBrand. And if you walk this journey yourself, or maybe you're right in the middle of it, I'd love to hear your story and maybe even share it here on the podcast. You can find me at craftedclarity.net.